mentioned in some of the previous videos I've been releasing, we've signed on with a few new people this season, some new teams, new companies, and I'm really proud to announce that one of those companies, HMF Engineering. HMF Engineering sent me a sweet exhaust system for the RZR Turbo. It's the Titan QS system, so it's the Titan Quiet series. So it's the Titan exhaust system with the quiet cores in it. Aside from just the mufflers, it's a full system. It comes with a turbo back pipe, so it's a new down pipe. It's a bigger diameter, nicer pipe, heavier duty flex pipe, way better heat shields. It replaces this ugly OEM down pipe with these lame, low quality, kind of tinfoily heat shields. You can see the heat shields on the stock system are already starting to fail just from vibration and getting hit and washed and stuff like that. Also, this flex pipe is like ready to fail on the stock system. It's not as good as this one. This is more of like a race style heavy braided stainless pipe. This is more of just like your average automotive pipe, whereas this is something you'd see more on like a race application. They have it set up for like a regular full-size O2 sensor, but they send you a reducer so you can run your stock Polaris or OEM Can-Am or whatever O2 sensor you're running in there. You can see the flange design is different too. It's a much nicer transition and it goes into a bigger diameter pipe. So I'm gonna pull the RZR out now. It's got no exhaust on it, straight turbo. So you'll hear what it sounds like. It sounds evil. And I'll give you a better look at what we're dealing with here. So yeah, that's what a RZR Turbo sounds like with just the straight turbo. It sounds like a tractor. So you're gonna see the first problem arising here. This is exactly what I was worried about. If you look at the top two bolts there, those downpipe bolts are literally snapped flush with the turbocharger, and it's stainless hardware. I was worried that was gonna happen. These turbos get so hot, the whole exhaust glows orange, especially on the stock exhaust systems. And these bolts have heat cycled so many times. So you can see they're broken flush there. At least I can get to them pretty easily. Now with that being said, I am not going to attempt to get those bolts out myself. I got my buddy Aaron that's supposed to show up in the next little while. He runs a mobile, or he's a mobile machinist, and basically what he goes around full-time doing is him and his dad do mobile bolt extraction. They show up at your shop, at your house, anywhere you're working, at the airport, wherever you are, and they will remove any broken fastener or anything like that out of anything. These guys are wizards. So he's gonna come here with his tools and he's gonna make easy work of those stainless studs. So with that being said, you can pretty much expect to have to go through this yourself. Two of the studs came out, two of them didn't. Polaris definitely ran undersized hardware for this application. Here we have the OEM Polaris hardware. Obviously I bought new studs, whether or not they broke. Look how little these are. These are an M6. That is way too small. They should have gone with something like an M8, a bigger head with a thicker diameter threaded section there, because this hardware is just too small for something that goes on so tight and heat cycles so many times. It's nice to see that at least the hardware they're using is made in the USA, so that's nice. So, I mean, they're good. It's good hardware. It's too small for the job. I don't know if ARP makes. I'm sure ARP makes replacement hardware for this setup. In hindsight, I would have ordered some ARP hardware, knowing that it's stronger. But I'm just going to put this stock setup back in because I don't ever expect to remove this HMF downpipe once it's on. You're also going to need a new OEM exhaust gasket for the turbo. I had to wait like 2 or 3 weeks for this thing. I guess they were on back order. This gasket was $46. 46 bucks. You also need, if you're looking at an OEM one, you can get, you need another gasket that goes between your downpipe and your muffler, but HMF provides a better quality one with their setup, so I'm going to be using theirs. These gaskets from Polaris are only $6. Now I'm listing Canadian prices, so in the US the exchange rate's going to lower that a bit. So I've got 4 new bolts for my downpipe. I've got a downpipe gasket that goes between the downpipe and the turbo, and then a gasket for between the turbo and the muffler section. So this pipe that connects to the mufflers. Like I said, guys, you can pretty much expect that at least one of these fasteners off the stock pipe is going to break unless you're removing a brand new system that hasn't really been heat cycled. So like if you just got your machine and you want to put an exhaust on it right away, then that would be the best bet. If you plan on putting an exhaust on it, maybe it's a good idea to remove those bolts off your new machine and put some heavy duty, high quality anti-seize compound on them, and not over torque them. But with that being said, the method I tried is the only way to really heat those bolts up properly and get them like cherry hot. What I did is I ripped my razor up and down the driveway, or just take it for a little ride and get it nice and hot so that turbo's glowing bright orange. When that turbo's glowing bright orange, then basically that's your best chance at getting them off. You can't really get a torch or anything in there safely because there's so much stuff around there that you're going to heat a lot of other things around it. You might burn some plastics, but if you get the turbo uniformly hot by driving it, it'll increase your odds of getting that hardware out. So that worked to get 2 of them out, but the other 2 snapped flush. So I mean, I did my best. I was taking a chance. I got this exhaust a little while ago, but I had some trips lined up, so I put off installing it simply because I knew I might run into these issues. It's an issue you'll run into with any kind of an exhaust system or turbo-related stuff that's been on a vehicle for an extended period of time and has heat cycled over and over and over again. It's just the nature of the beast. You're trying to remove stainless hardware from a cast iron manifold or turbo housing that has heat cycled thousands upon thousands of times. So it's literally all fused together. It's hard to get to. So with that being said, if you're not feeling confident about doing it, HMF sells this system without the improved downpipe. Truth being said, you don't really need the improved downpipe if you're not doing power mods or adding any performance. The stock downpipe is fine, so you can get the slip-on system that just connects directly to the stock downpipe. If you're removing your stock downpipe also, I'll mention that if you haven't had the muffler off, or you haven't had it off for a long time and it's heat cycled on there for 2 years, it's really likely you might break the studs that come with the factory downpipe here. I'll show you a better view here. So you might end up breaking these studs also. I broke one a while back, so what I had done is I just drilled it out and I just used bolts to hold it in. You can use bolts, you don't need studs. Studs are just a pain in the butt. As you can see, HMF has opted to not go with a stud. They're just sending you heavy duty bolts, the hardware needed to bolt that all together, rather than run into the issues of having a fixed stud. So don't worry too much about that. If you are removing these, it's highly likely that you won't break a stud. You never know. The turbos heat cycle excessively harshly. They get really hot, even more than like the regular 1000s and stuff. They get super, super hot. So it just cooks everything on there. Get some good penetrating lube on there. Clean those threads off really nice before you remove the muffler, and soak it with penetrating lube, good quality penetrating lube, not just WD-40, but something good that creeps in there, and soak it 5-6 times a day or two before, multiple times. And that will help. It'll penetrate in there, and then clean the threads really good with a wire brush so there's nothing obstructing it, and your bolts should come off the studs no problem. As far as install goes, this is going to be really easy. The only reason I'm getting a bit of difficulty is because since I opted to go with the downpipe and I broke those fasteners, that's the hard part of the job. If you run into an issue like that, then do some research online. If you don't feel comfortable getting them out yourself, then I'm sure there's people in your area that specialize in broken bolt extraction, and it's better to pay them $100 or $200 to get those out than to risk damaging your, in this case, what's almost $3,000 Canadian for a new turbo. If you damage basically if you damage the holes in the turbo, the threaded holes, then you'll probably have to drill them out and helicoil them. That would be the fix. So there is options. It I just want to be completely upfront that if you don't feel confident removing the downpipe, you don't need the downpipe. You can get just the slip-on system, and it'll bolt up to your stock pipe. So you can just run the mufflers with the stock downpipe rather than running them as part of the full system. However, I wanted to go with the full system. I like this new stainless pipe. It looks a lot nicer than this OEM crap. So yeah, and I mean HMF was nice enough to contact me online. They watched a bunch of the videos, really liked what we're doing with the channel, and they wanted to support us by sending us this exhaust system to test out so that all the viewers could hear it and see it for themselves and see how well it performs. A few of my buddies run the HMF systems. I've seen many of them over the years. They weather well, they hold up really well. They're probably one of the best quality systems you can get on the market, and I'll show you some cool close-up shots of those so that you can make your own assumptions. The welds are really nice. The quality of the fit and finish is really nice. The quality of the material they're using, the stainless, is high quality. Everything looks really good. It's an expensive system, but you get what you pay for. Don't be fooled by exhaust systems out there that are like half the price and they tell you they're a full system. A full system, a turbo back system, comes with everything from the turbo back, which means the downpipe and everything else. All the other systems that don't include a new downpipe, they're telling you they're full stainless systems. It's a play on words. It's not a full system, it's a slip-on. Anything that doesn't replace the entire piping and all that isn't a full exhaust system. It's a slip-on. So like in comparison to the car truck world, you'll hear exhaust systems or turbo back systems. They're downpipe back systems or they're cat back systems usually. And that tells you where the exhaust starts and gets replaced from. So a cat back system only replaces everything after your catalytic converters. The biggest benefit of running any aftermarket exhaust system on your machine is getting rid of the catalytic converter that's hidden in the stock muffler, or before the muffler. On Can-Ams, they have a catalytic converter tube before the muffler. The RZRs hide their catalytic converters. Right in there, that's the stock exhaust, and there's a cap right there, and that's why these glow and get so hot. So enough jibber jabber. I'm gonna tape up the turbo, make sure nothing gets in there when Aaron comes in and has to drill all that. And I'm gonna get everything ready for him so that when he gets here, he can dig into it and get working. So here we just have a quick overview of what comes in the system from HMF. They send you everything you need. So you've got a backing plate / heat shield for the new exhaust. You've got the turbo downpipe if you opt to get the full turbo back system. You have both the canisters, the mufflers, all brushed stainless. They also offer a blackout edition that's all black. You have your new Y pipe. You have 2 spark arresters. The gasket for between the Y pipe and the downpipe, which works on either their slip-on systems or their full systems. If you're doing the full system, which is the turbo back with the downpipe, you have to go to the dealership and you have to order a new turbo to downpipe gasket. They don't include that. You should also order new hardware if you're doing the downpipe. They send you the rest of the hardware that you're going to need. They also send you an O2 sensor adapter that screws into this downpipe that adapts the standard automotive size full-size O2 sensor to the ATV size sensor, that ATV or motorcycle size sensor that they run on the RZR. The new exhaust springs, all that, and yeah, they also threw in like a catalog, and then in there was their dual turbo back exhaust instructions with pictures on how to go ahead and install all this. So they send you everything you need to get this thing going. Okay, so pretty easy to remove the stock exhaust. As I mentioned earlier, if you're removing the downpipe, that's the hardest part, is getting the bolts out of the turbo. Your first step should actually be removing the 4 bolts off the turbo and seeing if they cooperate, and whether or not you're going to have to fight with those. Once those are out, the rest of it's pretty straightforward. You'll remove the O2 sensor. This can be a bit of a pain. You're going to want to get a really high quality O2 sensor wrench, or like a line wrench or a brake line wrench, and I believe it's a 12 mil, but you don't want a cheap Chinese one or anything like that. You want a good quality Snap-on or Mac Tools one, something good, because it has to be a really tight fit. That's in there really good. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clean all that with a wire brush really nicely, and you're going to want to soak it with penetrating lube a day or two in advance and let it penetrate, spray it a few times, and really let it soak in there, and then that O2 sensor should back out no problem. So you'll pull the O2 sensor out, you'll get that out of the way. You'll remove the 13mm nuts off the 3 studs here. Once all that's off, it should all separate, and then the last part is removing your muffler. If it's a stock muffler, then there's going to be a plastic heat shield held on by 4 bolts here. You'll remove the 4 bolts, get the plastic shield off. That'll expose you to the muffler, and then basically the muffler is just held on by 2 exhaust springs, one up here and one down here. Once you pop those off, the muffler comes right off, so I'll show you that. You can use an exhaust spring removal tool if you have one. For these, I find it's pretty easy to get them off. I usually just use a set of vice grips or some pliers and a screwdriver. Get your vice grips. You want to get the vice grips really tight on the spring, and that pops right off. Same goes for this bottom spring. Pop that spring off. Once you've removed the 3 13mm nuts off the downpipe to the muffler and the springs, the rest of the muffler is it's just literally just pushed in there, and it just comes right off. You just want to pull it out of there. Once that muffler's out of there and you've got the rest of the bolts off the turbo, like we mentioned, this downpipe will come right out, and it's starting to rain. And now you've got your exhaust completely removed. All you're going to need to do now is you're going to remove the stock heat shield here, and we're going to replace it with the one HMF sent us and with the backing plate they sent us. So we'll do that next. So take their exhaust you're removing, set that aside. According to the instructions, they tell you to remove and reuse the downpipe to turbo gasket. As I mentioned earlier, you're probably better off buying a new one from the dealership and just putting a new gasket in there. If you're going to all this effort anyways, it's best to just put a new gasket in there. You've spent the money on the system, what's another 30 bucks for a gasket? So now we're going to move on to removing the stock heat shield. The instructions also tell you to remove your rear bumper, but I don't think you really need to do that. You can probably get away with doing all this without removing it. So removing the rear bumper in my case is a heck of a lot of work, so I'm going to skip that. Okay, so now that I've loosened the 4 10mm heat shield bolts, I can go ahead and remove them. There's a bunch of rocks behind the heat shield. So now the heat shield rides up over the bumper bars here, on both sides, the reinforcements for the bumper, but I think if I tug on it, I can just get it out. Here there's an electrical clip, like a clip for a wire for the taillights on the heat shield, so make sure you pull that off. Okay. Now I'm just gonna jiggle this heat shield around. I'm gonna bend it a bit so I can pull it through. There we go, the stock heat shield's out. Oh wow, I've never seen behind there. That's cool. We got the intake manifold, some corn. That's a hard place to pressure wash. So what you're seeing here is you're seeing the intake manifold, and you've got your coolant lines running in there because it's got a liquid to air intercooler on the Razor Turbo, and that circulates coolant through the intake manifold to keep it at a uniform temperature. And there we see like the butterfly valve and the throttle body. Everything looks good under there. Good time to inspect things and make sure everything's okay. Here we have our rubber mounts where the mufflers sit, the vibration dampers. And there we have our exhaust springs. So I can pull that off. Pull that guy out too. Now the next step, according to the instructions, is removing these two nuts from the transmission mount. There's 3 of them, so we're going to remove these 2 because that's where the HMF backing plate mounts. So since I'm back here, I'm just going to give this a quick wipe, get some of this crap off there. Not that it really matters, it's just going to get dirty again anyways. So here we have our new mounting bracket for the exhaust system from HMF, and their new heat shield, and there's the old heat shield. So this is what we're going to mount next, is the heat shield and the mounting bracket. So this is going to mount using the OEM heat shield 10 mils, the bolts up on top, and then we're going to remove those 2 13 mil transmission nuts, the transmission mount nuts next. Position that over there. We'll snug those up, just finger tight. We'll put 2 10 mil bolts back up there. 2 10 mils in the corners. Don't over torque those, they're just 10 mils. They're easy to break. Now we'll get our 13 mil. And we'll snug up the transmission mount nuts. You're going to want to get these nice and tight, but also within reason. I'm only using a 1/4 inch drive ratchet here. They're nylock, so they're not going to go anywhere. Now we'll slide the heat shield in there. The cutout's clear, the 2 10 mils, and the heat shield slides right in place there nicely and presses up against the plastic. There we go, it's in there nice. It's touching the plastic so it won't vibrate. I'm gonna give that a quick wipe down. Why not, right? It's only going to look this clean once. Now we're going to mount our silencers. I'm not sure which one's the bottom, so I'm just double checking here. It looks like the one with the longer tabs on it is the bottom one. So the silencer that's got the shorter tabs on it, the muffler with the shorter tabs, goes on top, but you want to mount the bottom muffler first. Now we're going to want to install our carriage bolts in these bottom holes from the back. our flat washers, and our nylocks. Position the carriage bolts from the back. They're pretty easy to get into there. Make sure this square part of the carriage bolt is engaged in the frame. Get your lower muffler or silencer, the one with the longer tabs, and you'll place it over the carriage bolts. Get a washer on there, nylock. Do the same for the other side here. Washer, nylock nut. Grab your 13 mil and hold that carriage bolt locked into place on the other side. So hold the carriage bolt from the back so it's locked into its square channel. And snug up the nylock. I'm not tightening these yet, I'm just snugging them up. Do the same on the other side. Okay, that's snugged up. They tell you to center them, but I'm not 100% sure yet how I'm going to center that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the rest of the system on first. Damn, that's looking good already. So now we have our first pipe position, or first muffler, nicely, just loose. Then our next step is going to be positioning the other one and the Y pipe. I'll just fit this up here now to see what it looks like and if it fits right. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the down pipe on. Alright, so I got the RZR up on the hoist now, waiting for my buddy Aaron to get here so that he can pull those broken turbo bolts out. So here we have a good view of the stock turbo and bolts broken flush in the turbocharger. So yeah, he's gonna drill these guys out and save my turbo. The bottom two came out, the top two didn't. And yeah, that's just the turbo life, guys. When you got stuff that's heat cycling as much as this, getting so hot, so cold over and over, getting fasteners in and out can really be a pain in the ass. And these guys broke like dead flush in there, but I think he shouldn't have an issue getting these out. He's a wizard when it comes to this stuff. So, yep, there she is. And we'll show you how these come out. So what I've done is I pulled all the heat shields off, downpipes all out of the way. I pulled the rear shock out just so that Aaron's got more room to stick his head in here and get a nice clean angle there. It's easy access. That's gonna make his life a lot easier. So we'll pick up when he gets here. Oh, you're making your little pilot hole.
That's one thing about stainless. I was drilling that thing straight, and as you can see my drill bit, it starts walking. Stainless is notorious for that.
Yeah, that's why I didn't even bother trying it.
It's still pretty straight, but as you can tell, like if you look in there, you can see where it started tapering off to the one side.
Oh yeah.
Up into the left seems to be the way it loves to go. Don't know why.
Always up into the left.
Up into the left, man. I'm like, it's habitual.
Gravity.
Yeah. Once you get into it, it's better, but it's at the beginning, it likes to do that.
you been doing a lot of? Do you do a lot of heavy truck and stuff like that?
Yeah, lots of axle stuff. I just did Cummins with oil pan bolts.
Do you enjoy your job?
Oh yeah, fucking love it.
That's good.
So yeah, there is a little bit of a gap happening. That'd be a perfect car for him.
Yeah, just.
Yeah. Any more of that tape?
Yeah, you put the hole in it.
Yeah, I did. I put the chuck of my drill through it. It pushed it in.
I like through.
Yeah, well, my easy old stuck in there. It's still stuck to the piece of the bolt, but I drilled it dead on straight, but all the way till that little nipple.
Oh, so now it's pushed through and the easy out's on it.
It's funny. I thought it would have released, but I guess it was just that seized.
Hey man, as long as it's out. I'd like to see. Threads look okay?
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, oh yeah. It's a through hole. Well, that's why.
Yeah, they are through holes. Oh, you didn't realize?
No.
Oh, I guess I taped it up and didn't get a chance to see.
Yeah, it's all good.
Would it have helped you if I told you that?
No, it doesn't. Honestly, it doesn't really make much of a difference for me.
Yeah,
Same, different poly. I'm gonna grab that little bolt back there.
You want a magnet? You got it.
She's stainless, Mike.
Oh, right.
Might be warm. I don't know.
Nice!
Then that's right.
Look at that! I even got a little fucking two in here.
I hope they'll give you two.
Good for you, man. That's great this time. Yeah, exactly. I'm not taking this down pipe off ever. As I mentioned before, guys, if you don't have the know-how or the tools to attempt this, don't try this if you're unsure of yourself, because you can really cause a lot of harm.
Well, they're a lot more open.
I feel like I'm working on a Mark IV.
Yeah, it's just...
The way they've got these... If you do want to attempt this, then I suggest kind of practicing on something else you don't really care about. Here you can see Aaron just chasing the threads. Is that the remnants?
Yeah, little teeny, there's like a half moon of a thread in the back, so I'm just pushing her through. There it is.
You want to make sure those threads are nice and clean before you put in the new hardware. It's a little sloppy, but I think it'll hold for the application that we're dealing with here.
Yeah, if you want, we can tighten her up before we go. I don't want it to be an issue before I leave.
I don't think it's gonna be. As soon as this thing fuses in there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is gonna help us if I ever need to get them out.
Yeah.
You're doing me a favor. These two will come out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Look at that. Oh, yeah.
Beauty.
Aaron really does make easy work of this. He makes this stuff seem simple. He's been doing it for quite a while, and he's dealt with things that are way more difficult than this, so this is a cakewalk for him. I'll put this on YouTube, you're gonna be out of business, because it's just as easy as watching, and then anyone can do it, right?
It is.
Anyone can do it.
YouTube video. That's how I learned.
And a bit of practice, I guess, right?
Yeah, just don't know 1 or 2 things.
Yeah, one or two thousand. Oh, look at that. Good as new. Oh man, you're gonna get all the business now. So guys, here we are. Took a little bit of work, but the broken studs from the top 2 bolts have been removed, or broken bolts that is. Drilled them out, managed to get them out without damaging the threads, chased all the threads with a tap, and they are good to go. So we're ready to continue with the install. So now we can put the HMF downpipe on. So we've got the new Polaris turbo gasket there. That's gonna go on there. And then the downpipe will go on. So my buddy Aaron came and he got those bolts out for me. It was a piece of cake for him. Pretty easy if you know what you're doing. HMF sends you an adapter for your O2 sensor that you thread into the downpipe. This adapts the regular full-size, automotive size O2 sensor into a smaller motorcycle size one like the RZR uses. Get a 19 mil on there and snug it up. There we go, that's nice and tight. Now we can go ahead and we can mount this downpipe on the RZR with the new gasket. So we got the new M8 hardware, 6mm Allen heads, 4 new ones. And we got our downpipe. I'm just gonna get the gasket over these 2 bolts there to hold it in place, and then we'll position that on the turbo. Okay, now that we've got the top 2 just started in there, I'll start the bottom 2. And we're just gonna snug all these guys up finger tight. The downpipe lines up nicely. Okay, I've got that snugged up. Now we got our O2 sensor. Definitely gonna wanna go with the nuclear grade anti-seize for this. It's good enough for a nuclear reactor. It should hold up on the RZR. The O2 sensor is a 14 mil. You should be using a line wrench, but that's more important getting it off than getting it on. I'm gonna unplug the sensor here. from the back, because I don't want to twist it too much when I'm torquing it on there, so that I don't tear the wires in there. Don't want to damage the wires. There we go, just till it's tight and it seats in there. And then we can plug the connector back in. So the O2 sensors torque down with the adapter. The downpipe is snugged up, pretty much finger tight on the turbo. And now we can move on to getting the back section of the pipe here, that Y pipe on there. Now we'll take our collector pipe, our gasket, our 3 bolts, our 3 lock nuts, and 6 of our flat washers. So now we'll take a flat washer, put it over our bolt, pop that through the back, another flat washer, bolt, gasket, collector, flat washer, lock nut. We're not tightening these, we're just getting them started. Flat washer, lock nut, and then our last flat washer on the bottom one, which you can't see probably. Once again, do not tighten these. We can then take our exhaust, while everything's loose, and it slides in there. I'm not pushing it all the way in yet, I just kind of got it started so that everything lines up. So I'm going to tighten up my carriage bolts now, making sure they're seated in the back. Don't go too crazy with these. They are nylocks, so they will hold. Okay. That's on there nice and tight now. Slide that guy in. Pull back on the pipe a bit. There we go. Line them up so that they're even. Okay, the canisters are lined up nice and even now. You don't want them sitting crooked. And now get your flat washer, and you're going to want to somehow get it in there on the studs. And then you're going to want to get your nylock. These guys are a little tough to get to. Okay, got one started. Just take your time with these so you don't drop it in there. Get your other flat washer in there. Get the other one started. And like I said earlier, they're nylocks, so they're gonna hold. Now let's shift over to the collector. This is why we want to keep this all loose, so that we have the movement that we need to get these pipes in there. Just take your time finessing these in there. If for some reason you're having trouble, don't tug on it too much. You can always remove these. And sometimes it's easier to get the pipe on there and then line up the down pipe instead. It should be easier now to get these guys in there. If you're still having trouble lining these up, go ahead and loosen the top nuts a little bit. That'll give you a little bit more play. That gave me a bit more movement. There we go. These have to be a tight fit. This stuff's all hand welded, so I mean, even though they're welding it on jigs, it's not always gonna be dead perfect. So smack those pipes in there. Okay, now those pipes are in there, they're pretty much bottomed out. Now we can go ahead and we can line up the down pipe. And I noticed that the pipes weren't lining up exactly how I wanted them to, so just because I'm a stickler for details, I decided to stick my 13-inch wrench in there and loosen the bottom canisters. You can get to the 13mm nuts back there. So I loosened them a bit so that I could have a little bit more movement and everything. While doing that, I noticed that since my bumper is on here and these bumper cross tubes are kind of blocking the tips here, HMF's suggesting their directions to take off your rear bumper. I really didn't want to go that route. I noticed it was hard to get to the top Allen head on there for the tips, so the other three are pretty easy to get to, so I'm going to back those out now. And I noticed that I could actually get to the top one as well, as long as I push this muffler up with everything loose. So I'm going to put my tips on right away before I can't. Man, that's a nice fit. So we'll start off with the top one there. And that tip is just going to clear the bumper bar there. So I'm going to tighten up the other four. HMF even sends you an Allen key. This bottom one I need to use an Allen key on because since the tip's turned down, I can't really get to it with the socket type. So installs like these are usually pretty easy. There's nothing difficult about this, but they can be a little finicky. These are handmade parts. No two parts are identical. So there is always going to be a little touch of variance in between everything, tolerances, stuff like that. HMF does a good job keeping those tolerances tight, but all the machines are a little different. Nothing's exact here. They're not carbon copies. So with that being said, you run into little hiccups and little speed bumps along the way, but by no means are they difficult to deal with. You just sometimes don't want to rush through them. You want to think it out and just take it slow, and everything will come together real nice. So see, here I'm running into another issue I didn't think about. When I push up on this muffler, I no longer get the amount of movement I used to because that tip's there. But I should still be able to snug this up delicately so I don't strip anything. Yeah, tighten up just fine. The hardware they send you is good quality stainless hardware here, so you don't have to worry about it falling apart on you or anything. Remember, don't over torque these. These are going to heat cycle a lot. And if you ever want to get them off, you don't want them on there too tight, or they're going to fuse on there and you're going to have a hard time getting it apart in the future. Okay, that tip is on. Now we'll put the other tip on. So remove these 4 Allen heads. Really digging the way this exhaust looks. We've got both the mufflers kind of jiggly loose. I've got my pipe positioned about halfway seated in there. Now, the next step is going to be to connect the down pipe to the collector while everything is still kind of snug and just finger tight everywhere else, so that nothing binds or there's no stress anywhere, excessive stress. We don't want things to go out of line. So we'll line all this up and we'll get our bolts with flat washers through the downpipe, through the gasket, and into the collector. So I've spent a few minutes trying to line this up the best I can so that the angles look and feel right. Now the bottom guy, you probably can't see that one very well. Same drill though. There we go. Get a flat washer on this side and our lock nut, just finger tight. Just getting them started right now. And just start our lock nut. Flat washer and start the lock nut. Now I'm noticing I've got a bigger gap at the top there and on the bottom, but the biggest gap is on this one, so I'm going to start by tightening that one up. Try and get that all uniform. Get my 13 mil. Start snugging this guy up. Should start pulling everything together. You'll feel a little bit of resistance from the lock nut. Looks like it's pulling it together nicely. So I'm going to help it out by doing the bottom one now, because now that one's got the biggest remaining gap. You want to tighten all this stuff up evenly. Now we'll go to this guy. All this has to kind of snug itself into place. The system will kind of balance itself out. It'll pull everything where it needs to go. If you're running into excessive resistance of any sort that feels like there's too much, for example, don't force anything. Okay, so far it's feeling all right. Snug them up, not going too crazy. There's a gasket in there and the fit is nice. The flanges are nice and flat. So let the gasket do its job. Using a 1/4 inch drive ratchet here, I'll have a hard time over torquing them with a ratchet this size. I'm not going to break these bolts that easily. Okay, that one feels like it's snugged up tight. That one feels snug now too. And the bottom one feels tight. Okay, those are all tight. They've closed up the gap nicely. That's done. The next ones I'm gonna do are on the turbo. Once again, pay attention here. Make sure you tighten everything up evenly so that you don't put any unnecessary torque anywhere. Go around evenly. Don't torque any of them right away. You want to apply uniform pressure all the way around in stages. Don't over torque these. They're going to get hot as hell. They're going to fuse in there. You don't have to worry about going crazy on them. Let the gasket do its job. You saw how they came out. They didn't. So these ones won't either, probably. I don't know the torque spec on these. I'm going to go with tighten up. They're not big fasteners, so remember, you don't want to break these because you saw how much of an effort it was to get them out when they were broken. I feel those are tight enough. Run your finger around. Make sure there's no gap. Nope. No gap anywhere. Everything seems to be sealed up. When we fire it up, we'll make sure it's not leaking. So we've torqued all 4 of those turbo bolts, the M8s. The pipe's running good. The O2 sensor is torqued in there. We've torqued up the collector to downpipe bolts. And now the last step is going to be to install the muffler springs and to snug up the mufflers and ensure that they're spaced evenly. Now I'm going to make sure that the spacing between the mufflers is as even as I can get it, so that it all looks uniform, and then I'm going to tighten up those bolts. So what I can do now is I can knock my pipes in there all the way to seat them. Now once again, I'm ensuring that this gap is even, so I just need to pull down a little bit on this muffler and then tighten up those top 2 13 mils. Double check the spacing, looks good, looks even on both sides. Snug up this last one. Okay. Now the last things I need to snug up is the 2 13 mils behind the bottom muffler that I loosened just to get some final adjustments. And those I'll just tighten up with my 13 mil wrench. I'll sneak in there. And bit by bit, I can tighten them up. Now I made a boo-boo. I'm noticing that in order to tighten those, I've got to loosen the top 2. So instead of getting frustrated, I'll just loosen the top 2. These should allow me to get in there. Those are snugged up now. Double check my alignment again, as in my spacing between the mufflers. Looks even there. Snug these up for the final time, hopefully. Okay. Those are snug. Spacing is even. Now I'm going to put my exhaust springs on. The springy part goes towards the muffler, or the coil goes towards the muffler. Get a vice grip on there so it doesn't slip out of your hand. There we go. There's that guy. There we go. The springs are on. This exhaust is installed. The last steps are to just double check everything, make sure we didn't leave any bolts out. I'm going to reinstall the heat shield around the turbo now. I'm going to fire it up tomorrow and we'll get a video of that. We'll do a nice walk around and show you the exhaust in the daytime since it's pretty late out now and it's dark. I'm going to reinstall the shock and get everything all back together. And then, yeah, we'll take it from there. So not including the removal of the broken turbo bolts, the install is pretty straightforward. The most difficult part was definitely extracting those bolts, and my buddy Aaron was nice enough to come down and help me do that. He's a pro. He made easy work of it. Besides that, it's just some finessing. You want to take your time and you just want to make sure everything lines up well, fits well. Like I said during the install, these are handmade components. They all have a little bit of a variance to them. The tolerances are pretty tight from HMF engineering, but there still is a little bit of variance between every machine and every product and stuff like that. They're hand welded, so you got to remember that there's going to be a bit of tweaking and fine tuning. So that's why you're originally installing everything with just finger tight hardware, so that you can move everything around, shift it into place when it's all together. You might have to pull things off, put them back on a few times to get everything just perfect, so it lines up nicely, but it's not difficult by any means. It's just a little bit time consuming, but you should budget about 2 hours or so for this kind of an install. If you're just gonna work away at it and focus in on what you're doing, then 2 hours should cover the install and the removal of the stock exhaust, as long as everything goes according to plan. But even if you run into a few hiccups, it shouldn't be more than 3. As far as difficulty goes, if you're not installing the downpipe and you're just doing the slip-on, it's really easy. You should probably have it done in an hour with the removal of the old muffler and stuff like that. The most complex part was definitely the downpipe and lining everything up. But even with that being said, I mean, I'd rate this probably like maybe a 4 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. It's not difficult at all. You don't need any special tools. Like I said, there's a variability here. There's a risk factor of removing those bolts off the downpipe. So if your downpipe bolts do break, this job can go easily up to 7 or an 8 out of 10 based on the skill set required to extract those broken bolts. But with that being said, it's a really nice system. The fit and finish is some of the nicest I've seen. I've run a bunch of different exhaust systems over the years. This one is at the top level. Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's metal art. It looks awesome. It really is well engineered. The fit and finish is top notch. Once I've positioned everything and got it all lined up, it bolts up perfect. It looks even and symmetrical, and I can't wait to hear what it sounds like. It's going to be awesome. So thanks a lot, guys, for checking out the video. Like I said, we'll pull it outside tomorrow morning, give you guys a listen to what it sounds like, and then we'll do some testing and we'll thrash it on the trail all season. I think this thing's going to look great. Make sure you wipe down all your tubing before your first run, because when that piping heat cycles for the first time, it's going to change colors when it gets hot. It's going to go nice and rainbow. So if there's any grease or dirt or fingerprints and stuff on there, they'll burn in. So make sure you give it a nice wipe down with something like an invisible glass or just a soapy rag, and then dry it off so that it's nice and clean. And then when you do your first initial ride, before you go mudding, let it heat up a few times, and then you'll get that nice color in there. Okay, almost done the exhaust install. Pretty much the last step. I removed a couple of these little 10 mil bolts off my old downpipe from the heat shields, and I cleaned them up in the wire wheel so that they're nice and clean, so the threads are good. And I took the heat shield that was originally on this section here that goes over the turbo right on the outlet and attaches to the top of the downpipe. The HMF downpipe also has a threaded hole there. So getting this off, it got a little mangled getting to the bolts, and you can see that the holes were a little kind of destroyed there from the heat, but I should be able to salvage it. Put it on the anvil here or just on the corner of the table, and if you just give that a good smack, flatten that section out if you have a big hole there. And I just put an extra washer on there. I flattened it out because this is like a 2-layer heat shield, and it's pretty thick, so I wanted to get enough bolt through so that I can get a good bite, because it's a little hard to get to that bolt, so I wanted to make sure it stuck through good. And with that extra washer on there, it'll hold on there real nice. The other hole doesn't appear to really be damaged. I just crushed it down a bit too so that I could get a bit more of the bolt through, and we'll mount that. Notice how dirty the heat shields are from getting mud and dirt and water and all that crap caked and baked on there. So I just hit this with some WD-40 and a Scotch pad and clean it up just a little bit. You'll have to form this kind of to the shape it should be if you bend it getting it off. And it doesn't have to be too close, you just want the bolt holes to line up as close as they can, and then you can form it back into shape once it's kind of secured to the machine. So let's head over there and do that. Hey Siren. Okay, so up here on the downpipe, you'll see there's a threaded hole for the heat shield, and then we're putting the other one right there. I've pushed that heat shield, I've kind of made the hole a little bigger and pushed it onto the turbo so it stays there. This is the only OEM heat shield that we're actually going to reuse. So we'll position that heat shield in place. Perfect. It's bent pretty good enough to get this top bolt started there. That's the one that I've got the extra washer on. And having small hands would really help with this. I'm going to slip under that other heat shield here actually. There we go, that's more like it. The heat shield up here, you can kind of bend it up and out of the way a little, and then we can bend it back when we're done. My hands are probably blocking the camera, but I'm sure if you've gotten this far you can figure out this last little bit. Finally got that one started. Now I can bend it into place and get the other guy started there. There we go. Okay, so now that we got those positioned, we're gonna tweak this guy a bit before we tighten them. We want to maintain some air gap in there so it's not touching the turbo. Okay, now we can go ahead and tighten those guys up. Don't go crazy, these are only little 10 mils, and they're gonna get hot, so you don't want them breaking next time you try to take them out for some reason. Don't skip in replacing this heat shield. It not only protects the surrounding areas from the crazy radiant heat that comes off this really hot section of the exhaust, but it also prevents some splashback and debris from actually hitting the turbo when everything's really hot, which could shock it. That bolt's feeling a little tight in there, so I don't want to risk breaking it, so I'm just going to stop there. It doesn't matter if the shield's a little loose there, it's not going anywhere. So now with this all in place, we can tweak that back into the general shape that goes around where it's supposed to. The wastegate actuator is down there, so make sure this heat shield isn't for some reason impeding the movement of that wastegate actuator. Now we'll push down the heat shields that we bent out of the way earlier. Remember, like I said, you want some air gap between all this. You don't want it touching the super hot stuff. That seems pretty good. Now I can push that top heat shield back down like it was. I like to push this one down and make a little slant towards the back there so that the water that builds up under the air box naturally just kind of flows off the heat shield and down. It doesn't pool there and stuff for when you're washing and when you're riding in muddy, wet conditions. So we got this heat shield back in place over the turbo, right at where the downpipe comes off. And you'll also notice that I put some heat shielding, some stick-on Reflectagold. Reflectagold's really good stuff. It reflects most of the radiant heat away from a surface, and it sticks on, and it sticks pretty good. You can see how shiny it is. It's developed for aerospace. It's thin, it's very heat resistant. It doesn't take up any space or add any weight. And that's because the flex pipe here doesn't actually have any heat shielding, and it runs less than a pinky width away from the cast head. So I just wanted to reflect a little bit of that heat off of the aluminum head there if I could. Just a little extra safety feature there. So that concludes our turbo back exhaust system installation from HMF Engineering on this 2017 Polaris RZR XP Turbo. The system we installed here is a Titan series. It is a Titan QS, so a Titan Quiet series, and it's in the brushed stainless natural finish. It also comes in a blacked out edition, but I like the stainless. I can't wait to see it change colors. The quality of the stainless is excellent. The whole system went together really well. The fit and finish is great. A little finicky in some spots, but you can expect that with any exhaust system and all this new piping and the new downpipe. They send you everything you need to do the exhaust install with good instructions, and it's pretty straightforward. They recommend removing the rear bumper. I managed to do it without, so you can too. So I'm just gonna put this shock back in place. I pulled it out of there to have better access to the downpipe, and because I broke the bolts there, as you saw earlier in the video, I needed a clean access path to get to drilling those out of the turbo. The worst part of the job is removing the stock downpipe bolts, because there's a pretty high likelihood they will break. So get prepared for that, have a solution ready. If it doesn't happen, then you're lucky. If it does happen, at least you're prepared. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pretty straightforward install process, and it was worth every bit of effort. This system looks amazing. 9 out of 10, guys. It's pretty much about as good as it goes. You're gonna have a hard time finding a better exhaust system than this. HMF Engineering has always been and still is at that top level of production. There's only a few companies that produce components at that level, and HMF is up there with them. So with that being said, buy with confidence. There's 3 different models to choose from with a bunch of different finishes. You can go with like a blacked out finish like I mentioned, the natural kind of brushed stainless finish, and they also offer color-coded finishes in some of their kits to match your machine. So there's a lot of options, both tips, colors, finishes, stuff like that. So like I mentioned, this is the Titan QS. There also is a regular Titan series with the loud cores. These are the quiet cores in the mufflers. You can also get the Performance series, and you can get the Performance series in a regular performance muffler or in a super, super loud one for like race use or going to the dunes or just letting everybody know where the hell you are. And aside from that, they also make a Swamp series exhaust. So there's a lot of different choices for a lot of different applications and different price points, both slip-ons and full turbo back systems with the new downpipe. So yeah, guys, leave me a thumbs up. If you're looking for an exhaust system like this in Canada, then make sure to check out RoyalDistributing.com. They're a full-line HMF dealer. So whether you're looking for a HMF exhaust system for your dirt bike, your street bike, your ATV, or your side-by-side, Royal Distributing has got you covered. They're Canada's power sports leader. So if you eat, sleep, and ride, you should shop at Royal Distributing. Thanks to them, Royal Distributing's been really, like, all joking set aside, they've been one of my biggest supporters from day one. They're local, they support grassroots motorsports on many levels. They support and sponsor, they're title sponsors of the Triple Crown Series, Canada's premier motocross racing series, as well as arena cross. They sponsor flat track racers. They sponsor street bike riders in racing and Canadian superbike racers. They sponsor a heck of a lot of grassroots motorsports enthusiasts, as well as even racing on like stock car and like midget oval track racing, stuff like that. They really do support the grassroots. And it's nice to see a company that, you know, they started out from a small operation, 1 or 2 people running out of a barn, and they've expanded to a massive e-commerce site, and 4 huge brick and mortar store locations that stock a ton of goods and have a lot of warehousing in Canada. They're definitely leaders in this industry. Now, if you're in the States, you can head on over to hmfracing.com or locate another HMF authorized dealer, and you can pick up your system there. So enough talking. I'm going to get the shock back on there, and I'm going to go test this system out, because the most important part of the install is the testing phase. HMF, baby. Volume controls the pedal on the right.